Namaste. Welcome to today's class. Let's start with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let us chant verses 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Number 5. Nodeti nastametyesha na vriddhim yati nakshayam Swayam vibhatyatha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina chitchaya veshato buddhau bhanam dhistu dvidasthita ehang kritiranya syat antah karna rupini chaya hankarayo raikyam Tayaf pindavanmatam tadahankaratadaatmyat dehas chetanamagatat ahankarasya tadatmyam chitchaya dehasakshibhi sahajam karmajam bhranti janyan chatrividham kramat Sambandhino sato nasti nivritti sahajasyatu karmakshayat prabodhat cha nivartete kramatubhe. Number 10 we will do twice because it's a new verse. Ahankaralaye suptau bhavet deho Pyachetanaha Ahankaralaye suptau bhavet deho pyachetanaha Ahankara vikasardhaha swapnah sarvastu jagaraha Ahankara vikasardhaha swapnah sarvastu jagaraha. So just a quick revision as to where we are. So just a reminder that as the book's title states, Drg Drsya Viveka. So it says that our analysis of our experiences and our life as to where we are, what our background is, where we are going. So a complete dissection and analysis of what is happening in my life with the help of some guide that is knowledgeable in this area. So guide means that the spirituality of the Vedic system. It says here's how you should look at it. Here's what's happening. It's kind of like any other science of that we are familiar with. Let's say medical science. So in medical science, there needs to be a body of knowledge which is very authoritative, which has been time tested. It had maybe some new things that are coming up that enhances, but basically how the body works and the diseases of the body, etc., is a body of knowledge which is there. Now, you and I can decide we want to be a medical student. And so there we have to learn from the very beginning. in terms of biology 101. Then slowly how the bodily structure is, what are the diseases for it, and so on and so forth. And finally we become an expert that we say, okay, we know everything. So similarly here also Vedanta is a body of life, and one which there's no need to do anything new because it's pretty much done. In fact, it is the very word of Ishvara himself. And so now we just have to understand what this is and become adept at it, just like in the case of the medical student. So there it says that if you analyze your experiences of life, what you will find is you should begin to see two things. One is Drik and one is Drishya. This is how the analysis goes. In fact, this is a very important tool that is used, which is that any complexity in life needs to be broken down into binary choices. And I remember this, our acharyas used to say this, that if you look at the life and how it progresses, both Swami Dayanandji and most recently Swami Viditatmananda had made exactly the same point. Swami Dayanandji used to say this. He said, if you analyze your life in terms of how it evolves, who you have become and what you are likely to become, what you will find is that every step of the way, you're given a couple of choices. Should I do this or should I do this? And there are no big choices to be made, but there are correct choices to be made at every step. And if you make the correct correct choice at every step, you would really reach where we want to be. And I can tell you my own life, for example, that when I was starting out with the normal issues with, I was in my early 30s and reasonably doing okay at job, had a good wife and children, good job, everything was fine, health was okay, and so on. But there was something in me that wanted to improve myself. I'm not quite there yet. I was not completely happy. And so then various choices came in my life. Should I read even this book or not? Because you go to a library and you can pick up any book you want. And what you have to do is to have the discipline to say, I want. And I've always been, this has been a great, I have a lot of weaknesses, but one of my strengths was that I wanted to really improve myself at all points of life. And so that led me to reading the right books. Then when Swami Chinmayanand came, and I could tell this is something very profound. And I had a choice of either attending all 10 classes in San Francisco, because I used to live in Los Gatos, which is like 65 miles away, pretty far away from San Francisco. And I had to go and drive there every day, or you can just do the normal stuff. I was very lucky that I made the choice that I want to complete these 10 days of lectures. So I made a choice. Then later on, when I met Swami Dayanandji, I was doing well in my job, everything was going well. And it occurred to me, wouldn't it be nice if I really studied under him and get an idea of what this whole thing is about? It's not easy to find a teacher like this. I had a choice to make where you do one thing or the other. There's just a binary choice for me. And I'm so happy I made the right choice. And from there, so every moment in your life, you'll have a binary This is what the acharyas say. Don't look upon this life as a very complex. Break it down into, at this moment, what should I do? So anyway, this all I'm saying that is really not relevant to what this is, but the Drg Drsya Viveka is a binary way of looking at my life. It means that there are two things. Start by looking, analyzing that there is something in me which is Drg, which is a seer, and something which is seen. So break it down into these two segments and get acquainted with the characteristics of each of the segments, how they are different. And then it says, and this is what was done in the first five verses, then it says, now that you have made this distinction, this Viveka, the word comes from which, means to distinguish. Distinguish. Is it this or is it that? This is called Viveka. And so now that you've done the Drg and Drsya Viveka, now examine where you are at. So that one started with verse number 6. Number 6 was an analysis of what you are. Now that the fundamentals of Drg and Drsya have been presented to you for analysis, now you say, where am I? What am I supposed to do? And so for that it says, please see that there is also a phenomena. It's not as though Drg and Drsya are two opposite things that are coexisting and there is nothing in between. There is, in fact, there is something in between, which is a combination of Drg and Drsya. How is that possible? Because the whole idea of, you can look at it as a reflection, you can look at it as an enclosure. In enclosure, you have the same space which can be enclosed as a small room or a big room. And similarly here also, in the case of reflection, reflection is a little better model to look at, is that you have a reflection that looks like you, but it is not you. And I think another very good example of that is that of the iron ball in a fire. So in an iron ball in a fire, the iron ball is hot, and in fact it is luminous. It can also emanate a lot of light, but that's not its original nature. It is borrowing that nature from fire. And so similarly, you and I as human beings are borrowing the power of the Sakshi. By ourselves we are not the Sakshi. Actually, we are both the Sakshi as well as the human being. We are both. But I take myself to be the human being, not the Sakshi. So this is what it was talked about, that if you were to analyze the human experience and the human conclusion as to who we are a conclusion of a combination of Drg and Drsya because of my identification. And that identification is that of a reflection which is called Chit Chaya. So Chaya normally means a shadow, but here it is not a shadow, it's a reflection. So Chit Chaya Aveshatah buddhau bhanam dhistu dvidha sthita. Now the analysis is, now that the two Drik and the Drishya have been presented, now let us see how it is, how it manifests itself in my life, in my experiences. And there it says that there are two thoughts that reflect the Chit. Two types of thoughts. So this is number 6. I'm just revising this. We've already done this, but I'm just making sure that sometimes the revisions are important because it consolidates the same thing which are still not very clear yet, still being formed. And so it has to be pounded in until it becomes clear. So there we saw that the reflection of the Chit in the terms of Chit Chaya manifests itself in two series of thoughts. One is called Ahankara and one is called Antakarana. And the Ahankara, which is also a reflection, which is also not the real Chit, it is a copy of the Chit. It is kind of like an iron ball which has been placed in the fire and has absorbed the quality of the fire. It's like something like that. So one is called Ahankara. So the Ahankara, you might say, is, and we will see this today in more detail, is the I thought which forms the soul of the human being. Okay, so this we are going to see in verse number 10 in a minute. Yeah. I will continue with that, but Ahankara, if I can even bring some of the concept that we're going to study later just to make a point. Ahankara is what would be called a soul of the human being. And so here the concept of the soul has to be clear in terms of the understanding of what Vedanta is saying. So make a note of this. The soul is not the real me. Then what is the real me? Chit is the real me. Na udeti na astameti esha, na vriddhim yati na kshayam, swayam vibhati atha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. That is the Drik. That is the Chit. Right? That is the Sakshi. That is the me. But its reflection as a human being is the Ahankara, which forms as the soul of the human being. So what do you mean by the soul of the human being? What happens to the soul? This we will study now in the next few verses. So very briefly, this soul, which is a reflection, will continue to be until it is known that I am just a reflection, the real me is Chit. Where is this presented? Where is this presented? This is presented in the verse number 8, which I'll do in a minute. But then also number 7. So number 6 was the splitting up of the reflection into two parts. One is Ahankara, means that's the I thought, this is me. So we have a person who's saying, this is who I am. I am different things, but basically this is who I am. This is the ahankara. This is the soul. The other one is all the thoughts that I have at my disposal, which strengthens the fact that the ahankara is the central person. The antakarana, it validates the ahankara. It says, yes, I can think, I can do things, and so on and so forth. Those are also thoughts, but it validates the ahankara. My teacher Swami Dayanand used to say that it's kind of like, you have a new company that is started by someone's idea. That's how it starts. And see, I think that I forget the name of, I think it was either Rockefeller or somebody who says, young man, he was giving a speech in a class or something, or young woman. What I would say is, find a need and fill it. And so make sure that you have a real need and then you fill it. So sometimes when a new idea person comes in, he says, I think I'm going to form, this is what I'm going to do. And you ask around and people say, yeah, that's a good idea. And then you form a company and then you hire people to help you. Because you can't do it all by yourself. This is too big an idea. And you need some help. So here, the person who starts the company is the ahankara. And all these other people that are helping you are not opposing you, they're going with you, but they are not you, is the antakarana. And so this is how you form this company of life. You're born and you say, this is me. Now I need some, you're already given some capital, you're given a mother, you're given a father, you're given some friends, you're given some siblings. All those things are given to you. But they all keep changing. All keep changing. But you is the soul of your life. This is the ahankara. Anyway, so in verse number 6 talked about the distinction between two types of reflection. And then it says that in analyzing what is happening in terms of your identification, because you remember that what I was saying earlier is that if you analyze, having presented the Drik and the Drishya, where are you? Who are you identifying with? There you are identifying with three things. And one of them is the body. And this is karmajam. And so all your previous karmas have brought you into this body. And so this body means, this is what is called Ishvara Sankalpa. And so a body was manufactured for you with your assent by God, by saying, okay, you have infinite karmas in your account, but there is a certain collection of important karmas that form the manufacturing of this body for this life. And so that collection of karma creates this body, and this body is good for this life only. And that happens when your ahankara gets in touch with the body. And the body also becomes, just like the ahankara is a reflection, I think in that sense the better example would be that first you have the fire. Okay? So the fire is none of these examples are perfect. So here I would say there is a combination of hardware and software. So your ahankara is the software, and your body is the hardware. And all these are borrowed. And so, for example, I don't have a perfect example for that, but for example, supposing the fire gets in touch with the vessel, and in the vessel there is water. So there is a successive touching which heat is presented from one source to the other. And they all become hot, but not intrinsically hot. They are just incidentally hot. The only thing which is intrinsically hot is the fire, which is the chit. Anyway, so then the body also becomes sentient, and your identification stays with the body in this life. Then your identification will move on to some other body, because this body is made out of things which cannot last that long. It is continuously changing and aging, and it gives you an experience up to a certain life, end of life, and then it just does its job and it's gone, and now you have to pick up another hardware. Software remains the same. So in this sense, the software is the soul of the human being. Software is the soul. Ahankara stays. Ahankara stays. And some of the sidekicks also you may take to the next life. So this is a concept which is well presented in the Shastra, which is called the inner wealth versus outer wealth. So the ahankara can accumulate both type of wealths. I'm just going a little bit more in elaboration of this, just being a little bit more free thought in not following quickly what is being presented in these verses, but just to give you a better idea of the overall sense of it. So the human beings have two kinds of wealth. One is the outer wealth and the one is the inner wealth. So the outer wealth is pretty clear. So it means, in fact, the body can be called as an outer wealth. And the distinction between outer and inner is with relevance to continuity between one life and another. You see, that's my point is, ahankara stays through multiple lives, and some of the helpers outside can also stay through the next life. Some may not, but some of them will remain. What remains with you is the inner wealth. And the ones that you give up is the outer wealth. That's why they say that no matter how much money you've accumulated, you cannot take that with you to the next life. This is called outer wealth. Whatever you cannot take to the next life is outer wealth. Inner wealth stays with you as part of the software. What do you mean by inner wealth? Inner wealth is the tendencies of your mind that govern your sense of happiness. Like, for example, patience. Patience is an inner wealth. Then tolerance is an inner wealth. So this has to be learned. Tolerance has to be learned. Forgiveness is to be learned. All these learned things where you ensure your inner peace. Don't let it disturb you. We just talked about in the earlier class also. These are internal enemies that you have. And so if you conquer them, that is your inner wealth that you can go to the next one, next life. That is part of the software. Outer wealth is just given up. Okay? Anyway, going back to this, so verse number 7, your identification is with three things. One is that of the reflection, one is with the body, and the other one is with the confusion between Chit and Chit Chaya. And here the important thing, which is what we talked about last week, I'm still revising, is that the problem which is Bhranti Janyam is that you don't take your reflection to be your reflection, you take the reflection to be yourself. We discussed this in answer to, I think, one of the questions that came up in the last class. So let me just reiterate it. The identification with the chaya, with the reflection, by itself is not bad. I gave the example, which is a very important thing to remember. I remember this helped me a lot when I got this concept. Is that as long as you take the reflection to be just your mere reflection, you're not bothered by it. Let it be. So the world is your reflection, your mind is your reflection, and as long as you know I am independent of that, even a little bit of an understanding of that allows you to coexist with them without any problems. The issue comes in if you do not understand who you are, and instead you take the state of the mind and the feedback from the world as real, you're bothered by it. It is exactly like saying that if you take your reflection to be yourself, you're real, then there is no end to your problems. So the key to discovery of yourself is to see the distinction between you and your reflection. This is the Viveka. So then in verse number 8 we saw that first of all your getting away from the body is neither possible nor necessary. Body is also a reflection, and to a certain extent the problems of the body you're stuck with. If the body gives you a lot of problem, it's you're kind of stuck with it. You have to go with it. But the bodily problems have two components to them. The component which is giving you some pain will not go away because that's the nature of the body. But the component where you expand the pain to yourself and say, my God, what is happening to me? And I'm in bad shape, I'm going to die. This is the component which will go. So I often give this example that, sometimes supposing you have, that often happens, sometimes you suddenly discover a black spot on your skin. And these days, the skin cancer and sun exposure, it's always in our mind. And so suddenly you said, this spot was not there last week. I wonder what this is. So you make an appointment to the doctor with your dermatologist. Hopefully not with an oncologist, but with a dermatologist. And now when you go into the doctor, you have two components of your fear. One component is, and it could be that there's some pain in here because of the black mark, and it's painful to the touch. So one component is the pain. The other component is the projection that this may be cancer. You go into the office with both the components. And let me tell you something. You know this, I'm just reminding you. The component of the fear of it being cancer is much more damaging. That really, you're almost oblivious to the pain, because all you want to make sure is this is not cancer. So you go to the doctor. The doctor looks at it and says, "Nope, this is okay. This is just some minor thing. You just take this thing. Now you take this medicine and it'll be okay in a few days. The pain will persist." Now when the pain persists, you don't have a problem with that, because you have already decimated the second segment, which is it's a cancer. So similarly, the body's problems have two components. The identification with the body has two components. One is the pain of the various problems that the body gives you. There's always something or the other always going on. Your tummy is upset, you're overweight, this, that, all kinds of things. The other one is the component, my goodness, what is happening to me? What is my future? Where am I going to? How long is it going to last? I hope I don't get Alzheimer's. All those kinds of things. So what is said is that in number 9, because we talked about this in last time, that in number 9 was sambandhinoh sato nasti nivritti sahajasya tu. Then the second line of the verse number 9 was karmakshayat prabodhat chap nivartete kramatubhe. So karmakshayat means that when your karmas are resolved, when they take their they go through the full manifestation, then they will go away. Until then, you can know anything to do with the body. You cannot take up another body. No, that's not possible. And first line was that if you take it to be a reflection, then it doesn't matter whether you have a problem or not, because you take this to be a reflection. It's no big deal. Let the reflection be. The only time you are worried about the reflection is when you take yourself to be the reflection. Now you distinguish that I'm definitely separate from it. Then you cannot say that remove this reflection, otherwise I'm not going to be happy. So it's unnecessary. Let it be. The main thing is the bhranti janyam. Means that the third one, which is the main one, is do the analysis to discover that you are the sakshi, not the reflection. This is where the medical science has to be, just like in the medical science you have to become good at it, here also you have to become good at it in terms of understanding the self. So this is number 9. Now in number 10, which is totally new, number 9 is now pretty much covered. We go into the aspect of the identification and some of the effects of the identification, which should confirm your understanding and the depth of your understanding. So I think we have talked about it before also, that in understanding what is going on in my life, I have three sources that can help me. There are three aspects of my understanding that I should be aware of. So one is called yukti, one is called shruti. Sorry, the other way, let me start with shruti, yukti and anubhava. So shruti means an authoritative voice. It's called shruti. So for example, when you're studying any science, like medical science, you have to know where is the authority for this? Where should I study? I cannot go to a quack. I have to study in a university which is well recognized, and there are books available, and there are professors who are well respected, and so on. I remember there's a friend of mine that was a heart surgeon. I actually had a bypass operation on my heart about 21 years ago, I think 1999. And there's a neighbor and a friend of mine that became friendly after we got to know him. And so I still remember, I'm just on the side, I was recuperating from my bypass surgery, which took about a month or so to do. And I was lying there, and I didn't know who this gentleman was. And so my wife said, there's some neighbors who I've met a couple of times. They've come to say hello to you. Is it okay? I said, sure, come on in. So he came in, and we were talking about, he's still there. So he was saying, so how was it? So I was describing to him all the great detail about all the procedures, about the heart surgery and all this sort of thing. It was later I found out that he is a heart surgeon himself. He was just being polite and sort of letting me talk. He's an expert. I found this out later. So then I asked him, I says, how did you become a heart surgeon? He says, I was very lucky. I worked under Dr. Drsya in Houston, I think it was, not Dallas. I believe it was in Houston. Dr. Drsya was one of the first surgeons that experimented with bypass, where bypass is a very interesting thing. You cut open your skin. Now my scar is gone, but at one time you could see the whole scar where they opened up the whole chest like this and opened up the heart right in the middle, and then shut off the heart and bypass your blood and the pumping motion through an external device. So I was really dead for a while. It was a very interesting experience, because I remember when the whole surgery happened, I came out, and for a while I had very strange thoughts. All I was saying was, who am I? Where am I? I had no idea. Quite honestly, this had lasted like 2 or 3 minutes. But I slowly had to say, this is a room. Oh, this is a room. Okay, so why am I? Oh, yes, that's right. And my whole self-estimation as to who am I? Am I a male or a female? All of that happened much later. Anyway, I'm just going on and on. Anyway, so when I talked to this friend of mine, he said, I was very fortunate to work under the authority of Dr. Drsya. So the Shruti, the Vedantic scriptures, is the authority, is called Shruti. And when the authority, Dr. Drsya made it a practical surgical procedure. Yes, it works. Before that, they were not sure whether it makes sense or not. And I'm not sure he was the first one, but he was one of the first foremost doctors that did open bypass surgery. He was the authority. Similarly, the Shruti is the authority. So there are three factors involved in my estimation of myself. One is I need to be under the care of an authoritative voice. So Vedanta has been there forever. It's not just 1,000 years old or 2,000 years old or something like that, done by a human being. No. This is the authority which is antiquated, works. Same examples, same methodology, it works. So this is called Shruti. The second one is Yukti. Yukti means that it must be reasonable. Swami Dayananda used to give this example that he says, if the Shruti says, yesterday I saw an elephant come out of my left ear. Even if you say, you need to have faith and you have Shraddha, but let me tell you my experience. I'll walk out of a class like this. So whatever is being said should be reasonable. The third one is Anubhava. Anubhava is, it should square off with my own experience. Not only should it be logically relevant, not only should it be something to be relied on as authority, but it should also square off with my anubhava, with my own experience. Then my mind will be open to it. So in a way, this verse number 10 is the anubhava. So look at it that way, number 10. So it says, let's see how much time we have. Oh my gosh, it's only 10:47. Ahankara laye suptau bhavet deho api achetanaha ahankara vikasardhaha swapnaha sarvastu jagaraha. So this is an experience that you should validate and confirm that this is what the Shruti is saying. Shruti is saying that you are the ahankara, right? You're the soul. You're not the ultimate you, that is the Sakshi, but right now you are the ahankara. You are the human being. You are the soul of the human being. The I thought. This ahankara has 3 states during a 24-hour period. It has 3 forms, 3 states. Kind of like 3 movies, if you may. That's one good way to look at it. You're starring in 3 movies within a 24-hour period. One of them is where the ahankara is absent. When you go to deep sleep, the I thought disappears. Completely disappears. When the I thought disappears, the ahankara, the touching with the body also disappears. Because remember, there was a successive touching. So you have the chit, which was like fire, and then you had the ahankara, which was in the middle, and then you have the body on next to it. So ahankara got its reflection and the power from chit, and the body got its power and chit from the ahankara. So in the deep sleep, the ahankara disappears. This is the anubhava. You should see this. We're not talking about something which you have to sort of think about why. This is every day. And you're given this picture every day for rotating every 24 hours. That's why 24 hours is a very significant thing. This is the very basic moral. And so at night time, the ahankara disappears. And because the ahankara disappears, the body also disappears. All other thoughts disappear, all these helpers. So it's kind of like you for the time being, you have terminated your startup. You don't have any helpers, you are also not there, nothing happens. And what are the consequences of this? Consequences are, you are literally disconnected from your body. You are unaware of anything that happens to your body. This is our experience. We may have a lot of pain. You may have injured yourself during the day. You might have had a burn or a cut. At night time, you don't have any feelings whatsoever. Not only that, somebody can come and touch you at night time, and you don't know it. You have no idea. I think if you look at the book by Swami Viditatmananda, he had recited this very nice example that Swami Dayanandji had given. Beautiful example of this phenomena, and which is that in a compartment in India, in a train compartment, where they were only sitting accommodation. So this is called third class. I guess third class is not there anymore, just the second class. But anyway, don't have enough space to lie down. So there were 4 religious people, a Hindu Brahmin, a Muslim, a Christian, and some 4th person, Jewish person. They were all sitting there. They all had their own certain identification. The Hindu person, Brahmins don't want to have they don't even touch non-Brahmins. They just want to be just completely pure. Similarly, the Christian gentleman and the Muslim gentleman, they have their own identity, and they were sitting. They were sitting so that a little bit far away from each other, and so on. And then, as the night came, and the movement of the train that made them go to sleep, they all had their own. They took out their own dinners and they ate them and so on. Then they were tired. And then in the middle of the night, their arms and limbs were all interposed. Then the Brahmin person's head was on the shoulder of the Muslim gentleman, and the Muslim gentleman's foot was crossed over to the Christian. They were all jumbled up. And if somebody had taken a picture of them, they would be just aghast at it. This is what happens in sleep. You have no knowledge about what your body is, where it is, or anything. So this is what it is saying, that the ahankara has 3 stages. So one stage is ahankara laye suptau bhavet deha api achetana. So when the ahankara disappears, the Deha also becomes non-sentient, as though nothing happens. And then the Ahankara now has a state where it is only associated with the mind, but not with the sense organs, not with the outside, because the sense organs are important to have a relationship with the outside world. That happens in the waking state. In the waking state, you have a full, so what is called half awake and fully awake. So the half awake is where you only have the mind is active, and the Ahankara develops a relationship with the mind and develops some dreams. And you actually have you have pain and suffering, or some joy. So our Shastra says that the karmas and the karma phala, the results of the actions, not only accrue during waking hours, which we all know they do, but even in the dream. Even in the dream. So in the dream also, so there's a lot of reasons for the dream. We will see this in much more detail later on. We are studying that in the Mandukya Upanishad. That dream is a very important creation where you can see the similarity of the dream to the waking, and finally see the non-reality of the waking as well, just as you are aware of in the dream. So there are some reasons for it. But anyway, what happens is that the Ahankara is now identified with just the mind. And the mind creates all kinds of play during the dream. And that is also the result of your karma and karma phala. So if you are truly a happy person, you will have happy dreams. And if you are not, then you may not have happy dreams. But that is partial, and it just goes away after the dream ends. And then you back again to identification with body, mind, sense organs, everything, the full regalia. And now you go to business during the waking hours. So what is pointed out is that the Ahankara, which is the soul of the human being, has three different associations with very different experiences. Please make a note of that. This is your own experience. And I will end by saying that in the teaching of Vedanta, this is just an extension of these three states, and we will go on in the next class. But I do want to point this out, that in the teaching of Vedanta, there is not that much difference between a sleep and death. This should be thought over, absorbed. This is the truth. So this is what the authority is telling us. This is the authority, because it has been well tested, and this is all the wise people say absolutely correct. And what it's saying is that, sometimes we are afraid of the death. What's going to happen to me? That will be my end. There are questions about reincarnation, and so on. And one of the students had given me, I had some correspondence with respect to that. So we have this strange idea about reincarnation and this, that, or the other. In fact, the fact of the matter is we all die at night time. The ahankara ceases its relationship, its identification with anything for quite a while. And Vedanta says that please see, there is more similarity than differences between sleep and death. In sleep you have complete disassociation with anything. In death also you have complete disassociation with anything. In sleep this is a temporary situation. In death also it's a temporary situation. In sleep you will go back again with an identification with something. After death you will also go back to an identification with something. It's all similar. Where it is dissimilar is you have to give up the outer wealth. In death, you can retain your outer wealth in sleep. If you have a bank balance when you go to sleep, hopefully the stock market has not crashed by the time you want to go to sleep, you have pretty much the same bank balance the next day. Whereas in death, the bank balance is wiped out. Only your brother-in-law gets all of your money. The one person you didn't want to leave it for, but there was nobody else, he got it. You are no longer privy to that wealth. And in the sleep, you go back to the same the identification with the same body. In death, you have to manufacture a new one. That means you have to now do the karmas that manufacture the new bodies have to come into effect. Then the right combination of mother and father are chosen for you, and with your desires also, and a new situation is given to you, and it takes a while before the body becomes functional. You are given an embryo. From embryo it becomes a small baby, the embryo grows in the womb, and slowly, then a child is born, and your body is very small, you don't know anything. So it takes a while. That's it. Now, the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, which is the inner wealth, is still there with you. It hasn't manifested itself. It will. So things like patience, perseverance, forgiveness, or lack thereof will still be there. You have to work on it. So this is the soul that continues from one life to the other. Why? Because the ahankara remains the same. Then, at certain point in your journey of life, you will begin to inquire into the nature of ahankara. Am I the ahankara? Am I totally dependent upon life and death, or can I not just be totally free is it possible? Then the seeds of knowledge slowly grow, and you say, my goodness, you figured out you are not just the ahankara, you are the sakshi, which is the basis of the ahankara. You are not a reflection, you are the true self. When that happens, the life of the body continues, But now you are wise enough, you don't have to go through the whole cycle again, you are free. So that is the start of the verse number 10, where the implications of the ahankara in terms of what it associates with is talked about. So we'll continue next week. So I'll stop the class at this point with a small prayer and see if you have any questions about today's class. Thank you. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Okay. Let's see. Associates with is talked about. All right. Okay, so some questions from Siddharth Omar. Do we accrue karma or exhaust karma in swapnavastha or both? You do not accrue any karma in swapnavastha. But you do exhaust karma. But the exhaustion of the karma in the swapnavastha is much minor. It's negligible compared to the exhaustion of karma in the Jagrata Avastha Sudha. And the reason for that is that there are certain unfulfilled thoughts that are difficult to bring to your life. Swami Viditatmananda had given this example that supposing your boss had scolded you, I don't know if I use that word or not, but supposing that he or she was not very fair to you in real life, in Jagrata Avastha, and you wanted to say something back, but you held your tongue. So in Swapnavastha, it's very possible that you will manufacture that same dialogue, and there you can shout back at that person. So in some ways, there is a function in the dream where your stored pressure of a steam, so to speak, can escape through a safety valve. Yeah, so that's the exhaustion of the karma. It's very minor. It's not really a major one. What is the similarity between Swapna and Jagrata Avastha is that karma phala, sukha dukkha, all the problems and so on are very similar. This is the one that Swami Maheshananji is very, very insistent on that. He says, please see that and I'm also beginning to see that the quality of your dreams is on the same level as that of your waking. If you are semi-sure about some things, you will have semi-sure kind of things in the dream also. If you are happy with your situation in your Jagrata Avastha, you'll be relatively happy on the Swapna Avastha also. So the karma phalas are on the same, but in terms of accumulation and exhaustion, those earlier comments that I made, hopefully that answers your question. Suvarna asks, is ahankara a part of antakarana chatushtaya or separate? No, it is part of it. So there are actually four of them. So ahankara, and then manaha, then buddhi, and chittam. So ahankara is one of the four different ones. And then in the Drg Drsya Viveka, the other three are called antakarana. And the ahankara is separate from it, which is the I thought, which is the most important one, because that's the very soul of the human being. Yeah. It's Bhaskar asking. Okay, Bhaskar. All right. Camille, does ahankara understand chit? Well, Camille, initially no. That's exactly what the teaching is all about. So the human being, this is the drama of life. The human being at one time thinks, I am just the ahankara. There's nothing else that I have. I'm just part of life. I'm alive. You see, being alive is also part of the ahankara. So when you say I'm alive is a thought. Life is a thought, and that is all part of the ahankara. And that's all you think about. I'm alive, and now the question is, what kind of an alive person I am? Who do I interact with? What are my experiences? Then the ahankara is told, my dear person, you are not just alive. Because when you say I am alive, just think about this. When you say I am alive, is this the complete truth or not? I think that's my complete truth. It's not. Because when you say I am alive, that means I am subject to not being alive. But at this moment I am alive, but I may not always be. This is a mistake. So the chit has nothing to do with being alive. Alive is one of its qualities. And death is also one of its qualities. But the chit is independent. It is not alive. It is satyam jnanam anantam. It is conscious. And it is aware. And it is aware of the fact that the body is alive. Ahankara is alive. So anyway, to answer your question, the ahankara does not initially know that I am the chit, but this is what the teaching is all about. To tell the ahankara, my dear, you are not just alive, you are the chit, which is satyam jnanam anantam, which is the very sakshi. Hope that's clear. Okay. Virendra Singh. When does real Sakshi Atma vision realization experience occur and false Ahankara disappear? It happens gradually. So even though the truth of it is given, but as your identification with the outside world, it's just like saying, so if there is a wave of the ocean that is told, listen, you're not just the wave, you are the whole water. And so your identification is with the wave. So it takes a while for the wave said, really? I only think of it as a wave. Are you sure I'm the water? So we say, yes, you are the water. He says, I don't quite understand this. Think about it. And then it just takes its own time. And then it happens. You continue to look at it. It's a new language, as we discussed in the previous class. And at some point in time, the hold of the outside world, this is the whole waking up. So when do you wake up? Some things happen to make you wake up. When you are waking up, the hold of the outside diminishes and the Atma shines forth. It was always there but not recognized. Something like that. It looks like those are the only questions that I have. I'll wait for a minute or so. Yeah, while you're thinking about it, one of the issues brought up was that perhaps not all the questions are visible to me. And so we did some analysis of that, and I think Chandra and Raj found out that yes, indeed, there are some AI embedded in the chat window where it arbitrarily doesn't show all the questions. So there are some options that you can do to make sure that all questions are done, and I think that's already been done. So hopefully we won't have any hidden questions that I could not see. Let me know if that is the case. Okay, no more questions. So we will see you next week. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.